There are countless books, white papers, blog posts, workshops, and TED Talks about building a community, all offering complex models and guidelines. A strong and cohesive community is pretty simple. It's just bringing together people with similar interests and challenges to learn, connect, and serve for the good of themselves and others. Communities that make a difference understand the chances one gives are just as important as the chances one takes. That's why CEO.com clubs exist, to give and take chances on ourselves and others. CEO.com clubs are exclusive, invite-only communities that connect visionary leaders based on specific challenges, industry focus, and leadership goals. We do this in various ways, including providing a private social network for community members only, highly curated leadership events, access to our member directory, and, well, you get the idea. You can learn all about the array of benefits at ceo.com/clubs. More than anything, what CEO.com clubs uniquely do better than anyone else is bringing leaders with similar interests and challenges together to ask each other the following two questions. How can I help you? And how can we give a chance to someone else? If you're a leader in a specific industry who wants to give and take chances on yourself and others, CEO.com has a club for you. Life is more gratifying and full of purpose when you become someone who gives as many chances as you take.
The cloud was a really big deal and still is like a huge, huge deal.
Yeah.
We kind of skipped that.
I think it's because it just became so consumable.
Yeah.
Like, in market so quickly that people adopted it, and the mentality around it all changed. But I think the more risk adverse organisations, particularly in Australia, were obviously like even the federal government, state governments, took them a while to change across to clouds, and they're still doing it today. I mean,
you can always find an industry or sector who's still like running everything through paper.
Yeah.
Like
it still exists today.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the home care market in the US.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
We're rolling, man.
So we're to...
As soon as I walk in, we're rolling.
Oh, right.
No.
Hey.
That's not the rule.
No?
No. How are you? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
I've done some research on your company, and I was looking at it this morning. It's really cool.
Yeah?
And you're actually doing important work.
Mm.
I guess a lot of companies do important work, but yours seems more important. Let's say that.
Well, I think I agree with you. A lot of companies do a lot of important work, but I think as an entrepreneur, it's always nice to be connected with your passion. If you can combine the two together with the entrepreneurial spirit and what actually is meaningful to you at heart, I think you nailed it. And fortunately for me, I was lucky to get introduced in about 2010 to Salesforce, which obviously I love as a technology, and the disability and aged care sector in Australia. And those two sort of spiraled myself onto a journey, which has landed me at, Lumary. And, you can't fabricate these things in life. They sort of, you have some directional things that you want to go and do, but ultimately, you got to have a bit of luck along the way. And so, for me, this is an incredible thing. And our vision is really to enable sustainable healthcare globally. We've got a strategy which we believe will achieve that. So we're super
And it's
excited.
called Lumary?
Lumary.
Lumary?
You did, yes, you got it.
Okay.
Some
Lumary.
people say variations of it. Luminary, even though
if
it's
it
written-
was Lumary, I would have said Lumary.
Right.
I always screw up. Like, no matter which one it was, I would have screwed it up. So no matter which one.
Yeah.
So tell me about this disability organization that you went to, because I understand the Salesforce piece, but what was that about? Like, what about that changed
What
you?
changed it? What started it? Oh, your typical sort of working for a government. They had a lot of legacy, technology. They needed to uplift it for the sector. And I was fortunate enough to spend some time in giving some direction around how to go and do that. And then from there, what happened was the Australian government introduced a major reform to the disability sector in 2014. And obviously being in the sector, I had access to a lot more intel than others might not have. I was really keen on making a product tech business, just didn't know what vertical to go into. Looked at several before this one. But in that reform, really what it did was mandate the use of technology and establishment of digital business like more profoundly than whatever had been done in the past. And so I could see the gap in market, the need was there, and it didn't look like there was a pathway for resolution. And so I think this is something I could make a difference in. So yeah, there was the driver to make a difference, and also the concern for the community, because if there aren't people thinking like me, well, who's going to make the change and shift? Who's going to do it?
Yeah. So
there was one concern there, and Australia is much more conservative than the US, so in all aspects, and so so I was lucky, and we're in a sector which is mostly charities. So the disability market in Australia is mostly non-for-profit organisations that are looking just to make a really good community impact. Many of them were established from religious orders in the past. A lot of donations were made to help establish them. But fundamentally, they were operating at a significant loss, between 40 and 50% OPEX. And so it's not a good place to be if you want to. And then the government's mandating 12%. And it's like, well, how do you bridge this gap? Well,
I thought you said the government was conservative. It sounds like
they made some extra. Well, I'd say the marketplace is more conservative, but the government wants to institute some real change.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but so with that in place, there was major reform needed to happen, and it took a couple of years. Like many of the providers I went to go engage with as prospective clients thought I was a bit crazy, because I was talking about this thing called the cloud. And everyone wanted something on premise, and I was like, "This is not going to work. Like, what you need to create here, technically won't work." And so, but after 2 years or so, we got our foundation clients, and and helped them bridge their anxiety of being the first in market. But then they played a pivotal role, as all foundation clients do, in being advocates in market, and help encourage the next lot. And the rest is history, sort of thing.
Yeah, what's interesting when you brought up the cloud, like we've kind of skipped that. We could talk about the internet revolution, and now we're talking about the AI revolution. But cloud was a really big deal, and still is like a huge, huge deal. Yeah. We kind of skipped that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's because it just became so consumable.
Yeah.
Like, in market so quickly that people adopted it. And the mentality around it all changed. But I think the more risk-adverse organisations, particularly in Australia, were obviously concerned. Like even the federal government, state governments, took them a while to change across to clouds, and they're still doing it today.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. So
you can always find an industry or sector who's still like running everything through paper.
Yeah. It still exists today.
Yeah.
Even in the home care market in the US.
Oh yeah.
There's plenty of paper-based.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So, us examining new markets now, it's like it still happens, still in Australia, Maybe they're bridging the gap for most of the technology aspects of operational systems, but there's still a number that is paper or still better than paper, but it's in, Word documents and files, which is not a secure way to, so still not good. But
interesting.
We're getting there.
Tell me about what it's like to build a company in Australia. You're the first person I've ever asked that question to.
Oh, yes. Very hard, in particular where I'm from. So I'm in a smaller place than Utah or Salt Lake. It's called South Australia, and Adelaide, where there's just over 1 million people in the city or in the metro area, and just under 2 million in the whole state. Whilst there's innovative things that are present in our community, there isn't really a playbook or a group to be part of to truly know how to seed and find a business like a Lumary. A lot of people thought I was crazy or nuts doing this thing and didn't understand. I had a lot of pushback, even with my own partners at the time. But I took some inspiration from more the East Coast, so people more familiar with Sydney or Melbourne, but particular Sydney. And there was definitely more entrepreneurial spirit in the tech space there. So I leveraged that and tried to make the right connections and networks as I could, to help gain the insight as to how to go and instantiate the organisation and put it into a structure that would enable me to run a product tech business. And but without that, I don't know if I would have been able to do it, because back then, 10 or so years ago, there's far more data again that's more accessible, and so it's the speed of which you probably could chat GPT on how to go today.
Yeah.
But back then it was a lot harder. And
was AWS around? Like, could you build on that?
Yeah, you could build on that. You could build on even Dynamics back then. Like it was early stage.
Yeah.
But compared to the Salesforce platform back then, it was still immature. But technically, you could build on these types of platforms. But it's challenging, and it's something that speaking to Ryan earlier today, it's something that I want to change, and make an impact and help with the community. And there's some movements towards it, but I think we've got to invest significant more in order to really help young entrepreneurs, enable themselves to incubate and to move into the next stages, and without necessarily all the difficult phases of funding that they might have to traverse.
Yeah. You mentioned Ryan. That's the great Ryan Westwood, the CEO of Fullcast, a wonderful man. He's actually in the room right now.
I said it like that. So
we're performing for an audience of one, which is incredible. I wonder what the venture ecosystem is like in Australia, because as I think about that, particularly if we're talking 10 years ago, the venture ecosystem, even in Utah, where I'm from, was not great. I want to say there wasn't tons of capital. It wasn't super easy. So what was it like there?
I think if look, at my history is not exactly perfect, but I imagine, or from what I understand and gleaned, is that there was probably only a couple of funds that you could try and raise capital with in a structured way from venture capital. I think more came on. There was a lot of silent or behind the scenes type investors that would make investments and help companies grow for sure. But definitely there's an uplift in the last 5 or 6 years. Each city has tried to introduce a tech, Silicon Slopes type thing, to some degree. And there's far more funds now available. So let's say when I went out to raise 3 or 4 years ago, I must have made probably about 45, 50 first intro calls to VCs. But I suspect if I did that 5 years earlier, I would not been able to engage with that many. So it's definitely uplifted, or entering into the market and supporting different phases of ranges of raises. But so it's definitely changed and shifted for the better.
Have you been able to stay in the area where you're from and where you built it, or have you had to move to Sydney or Melbourne or these places? Yeah,
it's a good question, because I think I probably would have found my life easier if I did move. From Adelaide to Sydney in particular, because I travel there, quite a bit. But my constraints were I had my family there and children.
I'm glad you didn't.
That. And so I didn't. So me and my other co-founder and partner, we said, we'll keep it here. We'll base ourselves here. We'll do the best that we can. We'll bring in more talent. We'll create talent. And where we have to go outside, we will. And like in Australia, we have about 120, 30 staff, and about 80 are from the original founding city. So we've tried to retain it as much as we can.
But I love that. I think entrepreneurship should focus on building where you live, so you don't have to move.
Yeah, well, it's always nice to give back to the community. So
we'll
try and reinvest back.
Yeah, why are we building New York City again? Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's just that natural, desire as well to
you want to be in the thick of things.
Where you grew up, what was invested in you, and you want to see others prosper and do the same thing. And I don't think it's sustainable anyway. In everybody just moving to the same location, and this city's beautiful. This is the first time I've been here, but I think it's fantastic.
This is Provo, my friend. This is this is not even the big city here in Utah. Even I'm resisting the big city in Utah, which is 45 minutes up there.
Well, it's lovely though. It's really I don't know, it just seems very peaceful, place to.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's great. So what is it like to build in Australia and then try to go into other markets and other countries and start focusing on more international stuff?
Yeah, so the advice prior to going to the US was that very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Most fail. You'll be there for a while. You could sink your whole business with that initiative. And then there was the standard. I don't know if it's common here, but from an Australian perspective, it's the standard. There's one country, but there's 50 states, and then there's hundreds of counties and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So everywhere you go, you're going to have different regulations, rules, and so forth that you need to go and navigate. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be like,
Yeah.
But interestingly, when we did the analysis in the market and what was required in order to produce the product and take our technology and replicate it here, we found that many organizations had, simplified some of those factors that were concerns, and they weren't the issue or the big problem that everyone sort of built up to be. So our journey is we did a lot of analysis for a year, started building the product, took us about 9 months, released the MVP, took us about another 4 or 5 months to get it into a production state that we were happy with, at least in an early phase. And then another sort of 9 to 12 months to solidify it as what we think is now market leader. Well, sorry, I should say the market is telling us that it's leading.
Yeah, for sure.
And whilst I would have done some things slightly different, overall, what can I say? That came with challenges, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't too bad. I think the hardest thing is always finding the people that you can trust.
Yeah.
And I think for anybody, broaching into new geographies, that's going to be the hardest thing that you try and tackle, because trying to find that person that you can sort of center and bring a community in that is trusted is going to be, the thing that you're going to probably spend most of your dollars and time on trying to determine. And I think we were lucky with some of the things that happened, and unlucky in some things too. But overall, where we are today, we're super happy. And
well, those who told you that it would be hard to go into America discounted the value of your accent. That helps.
You think so?
That helps here. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Have you noticed that?
Well, it's definitely a differentiator, but at the same way, I would say is there was always a query as, is this an Australian company or is this a US company? And the reality is they're two separate entities.
Yeah.
But when you keep hearing an Australian, and in fact, the head of our ABA business today is I was going to say a POM, but he's an Englishman, as we say in Australia. So he you're hearing from an Australian in England, someone from the UK. That's like, hold on, is this an American company? What are we dealing with here? But when we can speak, with conviction as to what we're solving for, I think that all.
You just need somebody to get like a southern drawl, and then you'll have it all figured out.
I'm not even going to try. As much as I've heard various accents here over the years, I will not have a crack at it.
What do you think? How do you think AI is going to change your sector and your company?
Yeah, it's you see lots spoken about AI. A lot of it is rubbish, I think, as a means of just propaganda, trying to push something, and I think really in many cases mask the inadequacies of some of the technology companies around their product roadmap and real evolution and what they need to do. And in some cases it's real and it's genuine and it's making a material difference. But an organisation like us who has real deep subject matter expertise into the domain that we're operating with, I mean, we capture almost essentially the entire operations of the business. We can use AI for a genuine benefit and real automation and understanding in, what processes or practices can gain more efficiency, what things can we be more predictive in. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But but you need to establish in technology when you're implementing some sort of core operating system into organization, it has to initially operationalize to begin with.
Yeah.
It needs to be robust to stand. Like, you need the foundation, and then you can build on it. But everyone wants to build this average thing to begin with. Not everyone, I shouldn't say that. But there's many iterations, examples of that. And then they try to put AI on top, but you're not really fixing the systemic issue that you've established by not building the foundation right to begin with. And it takes more time in different verticals and industries, but you've got to start with that layer, and then it becomes easy. So for us, the journey for us to incorporate AI is going to be fast, because the foundation is solid and it's taken many years.
And you have
to
a
get
ton
that
of
right.
data.
Ton of data.
The AI is only as good as the data.
Anything's only as good as
exactly.
Rubbish in, rubbish out, right? It's the same. It doesn't change whether you want to speed it up or not speed it up with technology. But no, I think internally we already use it, like most tech companies. We're looking to integrate it more with each individual, even as an assistant, and just helping with general expediting that sort of comms or messaging or documentation or analysis, investigation into sort of works. But within the actual software itself, there's heaps of opportunity. But you've got, like, the way that we're operating our software is fundamentally we're providing a blueprint for an organisation to run a proficient business in.
Mm-hmm.
So we're basically partnered with them, right? It's not here's the software, go and try and make it work and see how you go. So their operational needs and know-how has to be embedded, and then we have to then maximize and through the use of AI and other ML and that sort of stuff to do it better.
Yeah, I don't really understand why people are putting AI in their company name these days. It's really interesting. Yeah. It's like you have a subscription to ChatGPT. Does that mean you're like an AI company? I don't get it. It's actually really hard to be an AI company. Almost impossible.
It's very hard. It's very hard. And I think it's super confusing to, not just to those that are experts in the domain or in the domain, but to those that are not in technology, this absolutely foreign to them. Like, it must be AI, and so it's great marketing, but doesn't help them. So what's the I think technology overall I think just needs a lot more better ethical regulation, and then I think just overall I think it's something that's lacking.
Yeah, the ethics of that is actually really interesting. It's interesting you bring that up. The ethics of calling yourself an AI company when really all you're doing is feeding something into some AI or open AI thing, and it's not really the same thing. But it's got to be helping you internally, right? Like you said, it's helping you internally, with efficiency and things like that.
Yeah.
Where have you noticed the best places and the best areas internally where it's helping you from an efficiency standpoint?
Yeah, I think it started, and look, we've got a way to go, I think, to become more mature in it, but it started definitely more in the engineering department. And I think it's sort of crept along now organically into sort of customer success and product and service and implementation, that sort of domain. But it's still, even for us, it's new. But I would say 100% in the engineering and QA side of things. And there's still more room for improvement. Yeah.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, right. Well, I work across 3 time zones, so that's not always great.
Do you know what time it is right now?
I think it's about midday. Yeah. I've been a bit on an adventure this morning.
Oh, for sure.
I've got got a great leader following me, and I'm following him around. So a typical day is normally start around 5 and start with the US. And when I'm in Australia, this is. And then once those sort of engagements are finished, start with the continuum sort of typical management meetings and so forth early in the morning, setting the frame of the day and that sort of stuff, or week or month or whatever the period is for it related to. And then the chunk between is whatever it is, right? So there's that, and then in the evening it's the UK. So and catching up with that aspect of the business.
Wow.
So
what do you do for fun? How do you stay grounded and sane?
So yes, good question. Very important. Family's obviously very important to me. Faith's very important to me. And so Sunday is reserved for church.
Yeah.
Reflection, time with the family, understanding what the values and importance are in life and all sorts of stuff, and giving real time to reflect and make sure that I'm on the right pathway, doing the right thing in the community, and then Saturday is reserved for. I do typically a little bit of work in the morning. I've slowed right down though, like nothing to where the early days, like it was every day, right? And then it's basically the kids and I now they wanted to start learning golf, so I thought, I'll play golf with them too because I don't mind golf, and so we might go all out. All 4 of us will go and have a round, or just go to a driving range. So that's something like that together, or just catching up with family and that sort of stuff. I don't really do. If I do something, it has to be done with others. I won't go do something for myself, like just me.
Yeah,
that's not how I operate, and I get satisfaction out of seeing everyone else's enjoyment, and so and just being with good people, and
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's it, really. Yeah.
What do you read? Like, what reading recommendations would you have for us?
Ooh.
And I'm not talking just like business stuff. Like, I'm just generally curious.
Well, I try to read the Bible a lot.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that trying to get some wisdom. Yeah. I think that's should be all our number one goal.
I think that might be the best, but
yeah, it should be at the top if that's what you believe in. So yeah, that's definitely up there. I will listen to several podcasts. I like learning about just the dynamics of the world and what's going on. My wife loves particularly US stuff, related stuff. So I'm always listening to her and then following in and seeing what's going on there.
Like culture, like celebrity stuff, or politics?
No, more politics. I say culture, politics, or even just, I say politics, but really what I think we're talking about is just the way the world's evolving, right?
Yeah.
So probably gets categorized into politics, but really at the end of the day, it's more about that. And then how does that align with, our faith and that sort of stuff? So like, where's the conflict happening, and how do we raise good children, and be part of that? So there's that. Like to do, various books. Like to learn about economics, psychology. Definitely one of my things that I probably spent a long time learning. If you're raising any sort of company, better start learning about people. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself into a few struggles and problems. So better understand how this thing works a bit more and what makes up people. And because it becomes just a lot more easier to understand and help people navigate through either their problems, and then sometimes it will work and sometimes it won't. So definitely, psychology, economics, not really technology. I think I spent enough of that during the week. And just learning from the past, historical books, documentaries, that sort of stuff if I get time.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
How do you think about the United States and Australia? Like, I asked this question, I don't know when this will go live, but we're like, and you don't need to comment on any of what I'm about to say, but we have a presidential election, I think in like 18 days, which is a big deal for us. Is it a big deal in Australia?
Mm-hmm.
It is?
Oh, yes. You would not believe the amount of, and I don't watch it.
Sure.
Because I can't. It's just too much.
Yeah,
right?
You're smart.
It is on TV all the time. Everything that happens here, at least a summary of it is publicised in Australia.
What is Australians' views of us in the United States and our political system?
Jeez, that's a good question. It's going to range, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing probably everyone will agree on is it's very much polarised. So yeah. So there's definitely, I'm sure most Australians would say that, and I think that's had a major influence on the Australian community, because I see that affecting us as a means of polarisation as well.
Interesting.
Which I'm not happy with.
Yeah, we're exporting that. That sucks.
Well, so you've been amazing in the earlier years of this beautiful country. Been amazing in influencing people in the right way. Fortunately, we've lost our path a bit, haven't we? And
I can't even imagine what it would be like to those are the two candidates that they chose. That's who they're picking from. Do you have those moments?
Yeah, they say
as Americans, we all have those what? Those are the two. But that's every 4 years. But in particular, it must be odd in this era that who we're putting up and who we might elect is pretty wild. It actually is crazy.
Yeah, I mean the last 8-10 years have been, I think, crazy. I don't know, and I'm no expert on politics. Let's call that out right now.
Me neither, yeah.
But it's interesting here is that it's a 4-year tenure. It's not in Australia.
What is it in Australia?
You can keep getting re-elected indefinitely.
I don't like that.
Well, see, you say that. But I think as a business owner and entrepreneur, how much can I affect in 4 years? Whereas or 8 years? And how much can I affect over 10, 20?
The predictability of that is probably pretty good. Right? You know what you're going to get. And as long as things are going well, that is kind of interesting, actually.
I don't know where the right or wrong is. But
I don't know that we've ever had a president we'd want more than 8 years.
Yeah.
I'm just speaking on behalf of America.
Yeah. No comment. I have no idea. I'm not a citizen. But we've had prime ministers in Australia. I think they've had 20.
Wow.
Now, look, like I said, I'm no expert, but I'm sure there was one that was, just over 20 years.
That's wild.
There's definitely ones more recently been 12, so, and the country was, Australians are probably going to knock me up now. But I think there was in many times, it was not like it was an unreasonable state. Otherwise, I don't think those people would have been re-elected, for the most part. But I think it did give stability to the country and structure and order and at least a pathway. And if you didn't agree with it, then okay, fine, you change who you want to vote for.
Yeah, there is something about predictability because right now we're in this, at least in the United States, where we don't know what's going to happen next year until that thing gets sorted out. How much, away from the politics, how much do you look at our markets and what's happening in the stock market here versus, the economy there, or Are they mirroring each other? Or are they
Well, our stock market is terrible. basically it's mostly in a rut. I think it's because of this. It's 100% because of the influence here.
Oh, interesting.
And we don't know what's happening economically, so people get scared and they put their obviously investments into more secure assets. And do I look here? Yeah, I look here a little bit, but I just generally don't understand this fiat system that you have here today. So, if you call it a system, I don't understand how it's even, yes. I mean, I do understand it, but I just genuinely don't believe it still exists like this. I know I won't get into too much more than that if you don't want to, but that's...
No, I want to.
Oh, you do? Okay. I think... I find that absolutely fascinating, and I don't know whether crypto's helped or not helped with it. I don't have a perspective. I don't think I have enough education or knowledge to know that. But I definitely think the way it's structured today can't be right.
No, it's not. There's no way. Like, we're trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. We're doing all sorts of crazy things, and we're supposed to be the richest nation, but it seems like the dollar's, getting less and less value. You're seeing, but yeah. Anyways, I could go on forever.
Yeah,
but the Bitcoin stuff is interesting, and crypto is interesting because that means there's no longer nations if that wins, which is kind of wild.
Yeah.
And I hate when they say it out loud, actually, because I'm like, you can't say that yet. Like, you gotta calm down. You can't say you're taking down governments.
No,
they're gonna take you down before it gets too big.
Yeah. I guess it depends on how we want the world to operate. Like, I think having like the state system here is a good thing for this country. It means that there's, I think, better use of the funding and understanding of what the community wants to go and establish and create. And I guess I'm concerned.
It's cool we've made that perception for you.
Well, I think yeah. Well,
I don't think it's actually true.
Well. It appears to be more true.
But meaning, like, we're not good at managing money. The state system is awesome, right? Because you can, if you don't like one state, you can go to another one, and it is drastically different.
Yeah. Whereas in Australia, it's not.
That is really.
It's very similar, right? I mean, yeah. There's some. Well, I don't even know what things I would say that I'm, majorly. I think it's more the environment, like different weather.
Yeah.
Maybe some different opportunities work-wise, but for the most part, it's the same.
Yeah, rural Texas is a lot different than Seattle.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Well, I haven't been to either, actually. But
those people would not, like you both would get more along with you than each other.
Yeah. Right.
Entirely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Some sort of like the hybrid.
Yeah. What I'm saying is we're on the verge of civil war, my friend. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I hope not.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, God.
All right. Finally, we end every interview with this question.
Okay.
And that is, at CEO.com, we believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. When you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
Ooh, it's a great question. And you go back. I think I have to go back. I'll have to say, without getting too emotional, my family, I think, fundamentally. My grandparents, who made the journey to go across from Italy to Australia, starting a, absolutely foreign country. I mean, it would seem absolutely ridiculous today to consider it. Then my parents, my dad was a big influence, my mum was a big influence, affording me the opportunities and enabling my entrepreneurial spirit. And I think without that, I don't think I would have taken the next steps. And whilst I was probably a little bit more out there compared to them, but they set the right foundations and principles in me, which enabled it. And I think that was the major thing, I would say.
Thank you so much for coming on. And thanks for coming in studio, really. It means a lot.
I enjoyed it. This is fantastic. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.